As many of you know, our Instagram account was recently hacked and we thought we would never get it back. But today we're going to be speaking with the man who helped us recover that and hearing a little bit about his faith journey as well. Stay with us.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on another episode of The Catholic Gentleman. We are your hosts, Sam Guzman and John Heinen. We're blessed that you are here. If this is your first time listening to us, we'd encourage you to subscribe so that you can get every one of these episodes. Unless you don't like this episode, then I get it. Try and listen to another one. If you're on YouTube, click that subscribe and that bell button so that you can get notified. We premiere these episodes live. Often we're on chat and we're able to engage with people. And finally, we want to thank our donors for making this possible. We just thank all of our Patreon donors that provide the ability for us to continue doing this. And if you have been prayerfully discerning, helping the Catholic Gentleman expand our mission to more men in this world that are in need of it, we'd encourage you to head over to patreon.com/Catholic Gentleman, check out tiers and see if there's one that fits your financial status, and we'd be grateful for it. So, Sam mentioned it in the teaser. We lost our Instagram account. It was quite a few days of headache and stress. It actually happened on August 21st, and a lot of you were aware of it. As you know, and many of you know, we got our Instagram account back, and we only did so by God's grace through the instrument of Matt here. And we're so excited that he could join us on this episode. So Matt, how are you doing?
I am doing well today, John, Sam.
Awesome. So I think it's great to start by, we're going to talk about your life, and that's going to kind of give the biography later on in the episode. But I want to start and just kind of talk about the situation with Instagram that we found ourselves in. So let me set the stage. I did not set up two-factor authentication on our Instagram account. And I had been warned about it and people had suggested it to me, but having never experienced it in my arrogance or ignorance, both, just thought, not going to worry about it. That's just another hassle. And hey, Instagram and Facebook, they own the world, so they know what they're doing. I'm not going to worry about it. And so I got, here at the Catholic Gentleman, there's multiple people that have access to our Instagram account, and I received a text that asked to click on a button to give somebody access. That happens frequently enough over here when somebody is like traveling or they're trying to access it on their phone or their computer. So I didn't think twice. And I clicked on the button, and then 30 minutes later was told by a close friend of mine that our Instagram account had been hacked and was promoting a Bitcoin scam to other people. And I immediately sat down and was like, hey, I'm a marketer by profession. I have Facebook reps, so we'll figure this out. And so I dive in, I start working on things, I start stressing about things, I start seeing that they are posting more and more stories and Bitcoin scams on behalf of the Catholic Gentleman. I start reading the comments about people chastising us and telling us that we are sinning by doing this. And I was like, oh my goodness, Lord, I just surrender this to you. I'll put this in your hand. And so I had a couple long days. I did talk to Facebook twice. They informed me what I needed to do, mark it as spammed, et cetera, et cetera. This happened over a month ago, and I want to make this known to our listeners. This happened over a month ago. I did everything Facebook told me to do, and I have never heard back from Facebook till this day. I haven't heard back that they're working on it. I hadn't heard back that they received my information. And throughout this process, I read on a Consumer Reports article about all these individuals who have lost their Instagram accounts and Facebook accounts with upwards to 200,000 followers. And so I had just resigned, hey, we're going to have to start from scratch. I know it's been a 9-year evangelization tool to reach more men, and we were up to 78,000 men. but we're just going to have to start from scratch. And I just surrendered to the will of God that this was something that the Catholic gentleman had to learn the hard way. And
there's a real sense of helplessness that goes along with that. Like you just feel like kind of a despair that something that's a really, really valuable thing, even, albeit digital, it's just been taken from you. Yeah.
So true. And so then I get this comment on our Facebook page, which we still had access to, from Matt. And the comment said, "Hey, I've been negotiating with the hacker to get back your page." And I was like, yeah, right. Honestly, I was immediately like, this is just another hacker. And I didn't trust anybody. Honestly, that's a trick of Satan too, right? Is to put in our hearts a distrust for all man, and that's kind of where I was in this situation. And so Matt here so graciously was like, no, I've been working for a while. And then another comment came in a little bit later with backup codes to, get back into your Instagram account. And I started and tested out those backup codes, and it worked. I jumped into Instagram account. I set up 2-factor authentication, and I immediately called Matt, and that's where our relationship and our journey began. So Matt, if you wouldn't mind adding your story to that, you were a follower of the page, but we didn't know each other, and you were not, you tell it yourself, and we'd enjoy hearing it from you.
So I fight with these guys all day, every day. I am constantly in a constant war with them. So, because they're always trying to come after me, after my company, and we fight them at every turn. And then to see them take over your page, it kind of made my blood boil a little bit, because I'm like, you're trying to get a bunch of Catholics to buy into a Bitcoin scam. Like, how's that going to work out for you? So I actually messaged your page to reach out to the person who took it over, but they were paid by someone else. So then I talked to them to find out who actually paid them to take it over, because it's weird how this is like an enterprise operation, meaning the person who's hacking into the accounts is often someone that's just doing it as a day job. Like, they actually have no interest in you or your account. They're being paid by someone else that was targeting your account. And so as I started talking to that person, going back and forth, eventually we settled on, returning the page back to you. And it's very dangerous to do this. I don't recommend you do this unless you learn the trade a little bit, because a lot of times what'll happen is they make their money 3 ways over. So they hijack your account. They hijack your account, and then they try to manipulate the followers into buying into the scam. Then they take your credentials that they managed to get from you, and then they sell it on the black market. And then they try to make their money a third way by selling the page back to you. So that's how they make their money 3 times over from one transaction. And so you have to be very careful when you're trying to negotiate to get the page back, because if they say, hey, $1,000 to get the page back, you say, oh, okay, here you go. Here's $1,000. They say, great, thank you for the good faith deposit. Now the actual price is, $10,000. They've been known to do that. So you can't be too quick to just hand over money to them. And, you batter them down, talk them down, and just make them get sick of you. But they hang on to you because they want their money.
Yeah. Well, and tell us a little bit about that. I remember you telling me you prayed the Litany of Humility, right? So you started this of really a good Samaritan, and we couldn't be more thankful for you. But then you had reached a breaking point as well, or I guess an end point where you felt like maybe it wasn't going to go any further.
I did, because he and I had been going back and forth for 2 days, and I could tell that he was getting very tired of me badgering him. But if there's one thing that people from that particular country, so this person was from India, they're very persistent, albeit oftentimes for the wrong reasons. But it just kept going. And at one point at midnight, I did break down, and I prayed the Litany of Humility, and I, said, God, if this is what you want me to do, happy to do it. just
Yeah.
let me know that I'm doing what you want me to be doing.
Wow. And so I guess finish it out from your standpoint. You struggled to get a hold of us. So it's kind of a paradox here where we're hacked, but at the same time, getting in touch with us is a difficulty.
It was definitely a struggle because I went to your Facebook page and I'm like, how do I get a hold of these guys? I went to your website. How do I get a hold of you?
Yeah, that's too funny. And so, so you got the page back. And I guess, how did that happen? Did he just send you those codes, or, how out of the blue?
No, he and I were going back and forth all morning because it took a little while because when you pay these guys, they obviously aren't saying, hey, wire it to my bank account. Like it's not that simple. Yeah. What they do is they also hack PayPal accounts, they hack Venmo accounts, they hack all different types of money transfer accounts. And the reason why they hack it is not so much to steal the money that's sitting in those accounts, because most people don't leave money in those accounts. It's for things like this. Here, send it to this random PayPal account of some random person in the UK.
Yeah.
And then they funnel it through a whole bunch of other accounts until it eventually gets back to theirs. Now, those international wire transfers, they can take a while. So that's where I was getting a little anxious at, was this the right move?
Wow. Well, I couldn't be more grateful for you doing that. And I would say just one final point from my standpoint that I really appreciated from you is, and I think it's important for our listeners to know, is that when I jumped on the phone and talked to Matt was real virtuous in his statement that, hey, they're just other human beings, right? This is a profession. It's a career for them. Let us pray for them that they might, be illuminated by faith and understanding the negative consequences or sin involved in using other people, but it's not anything that's a direct, say, terrorist attack against you from a moral standpoint, as much as it is just it's that they're doing their job, and so let's remember to pray for them. And I appreciated that reminder that you gave me, Matt.
Okay, it's just like with credit cards. Sometimes you get a credit card fraud transaction. Sometimes credit cards are skimmed, meaning you use it at a gas station. There's a skimmer there, and they will just steal the information. Other times it's just completely random. Somebody's just typing a human machine is just typing random numbers, and they eventually get a hit, and that's how that sometimes happens. So it's not always targeted. It's just sometimes it's just random.
Yeah, sometimes they send a text to a guy who foolishly clicks on it, and there you go.
Yeah, and I'll say to our listeners, we're never going to ask you to pay us for Bitcoin or anything else like that. Like, it's just that's not our method. So if you see that, it's probably a red flag. Don't send us money via PayPal or other bank transactions. But I do appreciate, Matt, your perspective, because you do battle these guys all day. And yet you haven't lost sight of their humanity and the fact that these are real souls on the other end, that they're not necessarily evil, but they might be from some disadvantaged country economically, and they're just trying to survive. They're just trying to make money, and this is the way they figured out to do that. And it's, I appreciate that perspective, because a lot of times we can just demonize. It's so faceless, you just think, a hacker, what's a hacker? And are these people even real? Do they even exist somewhere? But they do. And, to have the compassion to pray for them and to see them as real people is something that I think is really impressive about the way you handled this. And it must be hard at times to not get cynical when you do what you do for a living. But it sounds like you found a way to keep your faith intact and your trust in the goodness of the world, and to just, again, see these people as human beings and not, evil monsters of some kind. And I really appreciate that.
It's just like, I don't know if this is the best example, but it's just like ants. Ants are in your house. They're eating your food. They're incredibly annoying, but it's what they do, and you can't really hate them for it. You just say, okay, this is what they do, and do your best to prevent them from coming.
Yeah. That's a good analogy. Just what they do, but yeah. So, like, obviously, you bring a lens of faith to this work. Like, this isn't just about cybersecurity or whatever to you. But could you share a little bit about your faith journey? Like, what role does your Catholic faith play in your day to day, and how you approach your work?
So my faith has definitely taken a different change over the last couple of years. I was born Catholic, raised Catholic. I was a cradle Catholic. I actually turned away from the faith probably about 11 years ago. I had kind of been drifting away. But then when my oldest son was diagnosed with autism, I just thought that was like a crushing blow. I'm like, why, if God's real, why would he do this? This is like cruel. But then as time went on, especially within the last 2 years, God started calling to me to come back. And it, kind of pinnacled with my son being in CCD and going to a confession. And so then I had been to the confession for the first time in 20 something years.
Wow.
Because he was too afraid to do it. So I had to go first. And I guess God heard that and said, welcome home. Now it's time to get into gear. And, one night I heard a voice in my head saying, pray the rosary. And I'm just like, I don't have a rosary.
Yeah.
And then we went to his CCD, I'm trying to think of what it's called. It's like a mass they have at the beginning of the season. And someone was in there and said, hey, I was inclined to give this to you. I don't know where this came from or how it came to be, but I found it and I was just called to give this to you. I'm like, oh, okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I'm praying the rosary now.
Wow.
But that was tough. If you don't really know what it is, it's really hard to get started doing it. I didn't really understand how the mystery component tied into it. It's like, okay, you do 20 decades, just announce it. Okay, you have to think about it while you're doing it. I didn't realize how complicated doing a rosary could actually be.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate you saying that. It's true. Conversation that we brought up frequently on this podcast is how to start praying the rosary and how to do so effectively. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I'd like to hear a little bit more. So you started to drift away from the faith, and you would say you were basically a practicing Catholic all the way up until the birth of your firstborn son?
I was practicing. I wasn't going to church on Sundays. I hadn't gone since college. Once I started college, I had kind of left. Because I didn't have time to go to church on Sundays, and so I just never went back. And then once my son was born, I was just kind of at a loss. Like, I don't know, what to do. But I kept saying my Our Father and a Hail Mary every night, just because that's what my mom drilled into my head. No matter how mad or sad you are, how tired you are, you say an Our Father and a Hail Mary before you put your head down. So I always did. And so I guess God never really, I guess he heard it and kind of saw how distressed I was and eventually said, okay, I get that you're distressed. Now I'm going to walk you through why I did what I did, and you're going to come back home.
Wow.
So now we go to church every Sunday. Sometimes we go to church on Saturdays as well. And then, I'm in a Novus Ordo parish, but anytime that within the parish, they have a TLM in some particular random church somewhere, during the week, we'll try to go to that too.
Oh, very great.
Yes. And then recently, within the last 2 years, it really got pumped into gear because I was at a job that was killing my marriage, like completely destroying it. I was doing
real quick. This is where were you in your faith journey before this?
It was coming back to life. So
Okay.
My son had made his first confession in early 2019. And the hell that became my day job started in early 2020. And it was absolutely decimating me on all fronts. And then one day I just got a call out of the blue saying, "Hey, do you want to come work over here?" Well, who are you? We're just, we have a job opening. You seem good for it. How did you find me? No, like, we don't know. But you seem like you're the right guy. I'm like, okay. And so I'm like, well, that has God's fingerprints all over it. So
yeah,
that was pulling me out of that terrible situation. And he put me to work, essentially doing work like this of combating people who wish to do harm as their day job. And so it gives me a lot of purpose in life.
Wow. Yeah. Well, thanks be to God. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. It kind of took like a pinnacle though. I think once I started getting really in line with God, going to church on Sundays, going to confession weekly, starting to go to adoration and benediction somewhat regularly. One night, my wife kind of woke screaming, and she was just screaming her head off. I'm like, what is happening right now? And there was a shadow in the room, and it was like strangling her. I was like, what is happening right now? So I had a prayer book to St. Joseph next to me, and I took it out and started praying to St. Joseph for help because he is the terror of demons.
Yeah.
It went away. My wife and I both saw kind of like a bright light in the shape of an eye in the room, which was really strange. And my wife and I just looked at each other. What was that?
Wow.
So I don't know if that was one last failed vengeful strike to say, hey, you were mine, come back to me. But now we're
full of practicing Catholics. Yeah, praying the Rosary.
This all day.
Thanks be to God.
Yeah. And I think as we were talking before the show, I think you have another devotion that you pray that isn't very well known, but I think it's something that's important to you.
Sure.
Tell us about that.
Sure. So the Rosary, as you know, Mary described it as the battering ram into the kingdom of Satan, right? This is an offensive weapon that you use against Satan. But, the best offense isn't always the best defense. So one of the things that I think people need to start doing is if you're going to wield the sword, you need to wield the shield. So this is a Dolor Rosary.
Yeah.
It has 7 Our Father beads on it, and it has 7 Hail Mary beads. And then as you're praying it, you meditate on the sorrows of Mary, the 7 swords that pierced her heart. And what Mary promised St. Bernadette, I believe it was St. Bernadette, for this devotion, is that this is the shield against the kingdom of Satan. So this is your shield. This is your sword.
Amen. No, I love it so much. I appreciate you sharing that. And you, do you find yourself praying the 7 sorrows of Mary on a daily basis, frequently? How does that fit into your?
I try to do it daily.
Wow.
So what I try to do is the 7 sorrows rosary in the morning, and I try to do the Dominican rosary in the evening.
Wow, thanks be to God. No, I appreciate you sharing that. So, well, good. And for our listeners, I'll go ahead and I'll put that devotion in the show notes, so you can click on that and you can learn more about it. So, Matt, let's talk a little bit about your life as an IT individual, and let's go back to the beginning. What got you into this as a child? Were you big into video games or into computers? What got you into an interest in technology?
So I've always been a tech enthusiast. I've built my own PCs from an early age.
Mm.
I had the Sega Genesis, had the Sega Dreamcast. I was never really like a PlayStation or a Nintendo person, although that's kind of what I have in my house today is Nintendo Switches.
That's funny.
But I went to school for accounting because my mom always, that's kind of like where my mom pushed me and my dad pushed me. They were like, go do something with money. There's money in money. I'm like, well, I don't really want money. I want purpose, but I just did it because that's what they kind of pushed me to do. Then this is this is where I think that, God is kind of like, he's got plans for you, whether you know it or not.
Yeah. Amen.
I applied to a role that was called senior financial analyst, right? But it was not a financial analyst role. They wanted me to be the IT person, but they wanted me to be the power user for the finance department using the IT software. So they needed someone who knew the IT software, but no one knew the IT software. So they sent me to a training to learn the IT software, and that's how I became the IT person. And then my role just kind of developed from there. And then, if you want to think about it, in where God's putting things into play long before they ever need to be. My wife recently gave birth to our fourth son.
Yeah, praise God.
I have my oldest is a boy. I have two girls, and then I have fourth one, a son. And I was getting panicked because my wife wanted to do this birth at home, and I was just absolutely panicked because I saw what happened with my first son and how everything went so wrong. I had a dream from Mary the night before. She came to me in a dream and said, "Don't worry about it. I'm handling the delivery. Your midwife won't be there. I have it." Like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, was that, did I, like,
That's
and I think to myself, like, what kind of weird dream was that? Because then I saw my wife really wanted a water birth, and she wanted to give birth in a pool. But in that dream, she wasn't birthing in a pool. She was just birthing like kind of like on the floor from what I remember. And what ended up happening was she went into labor the next day.
Wow.
And she wanted me to fill up the pool, but we couldn't fill up the pool because I couldn't unhook the shower head. And if anyone has ever changed a shower head, it's like a 30-second thing that takes absolutely no time.
That's right.
I couldn't get it off with like a plumber's wrench and grips, and I couldn't, it wouldn't move.
Wow.
She didn't want me filling up that pool. So then she's like, let's go to the bed. Well, in the dream, she wasn't giving birth in the bed either. Bed collapsed.
Your bed collapsed.
Bed completely collapsed.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, well, I got to fix this. So
that's what men do. That's right.
So she's laboring, but she's not there yet. So she's like, go fix it. So I go to Home Depot, pick up a bunch of wood. I stop by on the church on the way back, go to confession. I kneel down next to St. Joseph. I'm like, you are the carpenter. Please help me do this. I go back to the house. I drill into the wood frame of the bed so I can, reattach this new piece of wood that I got to restructure the frame. And a bunch of bugs come out of it. I'm like, oh, is that termites? That's weird. Like, that's termites in the bed, but nowhere else. That's really strange. So we'll get back to that. So my wife ends up giving birth, and I catch the baby. And to this day, I don't know how exactly I did that because I can tell you I'm not an OB. I have absolutely no idea how to do that. But if there's one thing that I learned from that experience is that when you're doing the joyous mysteries of the Rosary, do not neglect St. Joseph in his role in that.
Amen. Wow.
And then after all this went down, I called an exterminator. Exterminator looks and says, he's like, those weren't termites, those were furniture beetles. And so I said, what exactly is a furniture beetle? And he said, well, about 50 years ago, when your bed was just a tree in a forest, these beetles laid their eggs. And they happened to hatch that day at that time.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
I didn't know that was a thing either, but apparently that's a thing.
I'm going to check my bed later.
Oh, no, right? Exactly right. All beware. Satan can use furniture beetles, but so can God.
Exactly.
Wow, what a story.
Because when I thought they were termites, I was praying to God. I'm like, what? I've been trying to do everything right. Why did you send this pestilence to me? And I just never heard anything back from him. But then once the exterminator explained what it was, I was like, oh, that's why God never answered, because it was just something that God put into place to have the delivery the way he wanted the delivery to happen.
Wow. Well, what a blessing. I mean, just to have eyes to see and ears to hear like you did. And, that's really miraculous. And God is always hunting after us, and he's always searching for us. And he wants us to rely on him and trust in him. And he's definitely giving you some very clear and present situations to do so. Wow.
Yeah. One of my friends it basically said that, Matt, you're being called to a higher level of sanctity. Mm-hmm. And I just sit there going, I don't know if I can even handle that responsibility.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing about your faith journey. I mean, it's really been a beautiful journey, the way God has shown up and how the Blessed Mother has cared for you all these years. And even to the point of helping you deliver your child and without incident. So that's really incredible. And I guess so. Just last question for me. I guess just something really practical would be, how do you keep from getting hacked? Like, like guys listening, probably thinking like, maybe I should check my passwords. Like maybe I should double check. So how can we protect ourselves online and keep from getting hacked again?
Well, first and foremost, so Instagram was using two-factor authentication, even though you didn't set it up, but they set it up in a way that was still able to be manipulated. So you had a username and password. That username and password, someone was able to get their hands on somehow. Instagram knew that it wasn't you or any of your associates because it didn't recognize the MAC address or the IP address that it was coming from. So they sent you that email to say, hey, do you want to let this person in? So that was their two-factor authentication. However, because you have however many people you have working with you and so many people going into this account, you probably just didn't know. So that's one of the things that you can validate is, when you get a weird message like that, hey, this wasn't me. You reach out to your teammates and your associates. Was this any of you?
Right.
If you want to set up pure two-factor authentication, it's really easy to do. I have I use an app called Google Authenticator, and essentially what that is if I log into almost any account from a foreign device, so whether it's Instagram, Facebook, my bank, if I use any of those things, I type in my username, I type in my password, the website will say, hey, I don't recognize the device you're on or where you are. Please, provide your second password. And then I have to go into the Google Authenticator app, and then the Google Authenticator has a password in there for that specific website that changes every 30 seconds. So then within those 30 seconds, I have to put that password in, and then they say, okay, it really is you. But then they'll probably do a follow-up after that and say, text message or email and say, hey, did you actually log in? So you've got 3 layers of protection there when you use an app like Google Authenticator.
Yeah. And it seems like a burden, but in fact, I mean, the amount of stress and anxiety that I had to go through I just can't encourage all of our listeners more to, like, at this moment, set it up and get it taken care of. And Matt, you work, and I don't even know if we've ever mentioned this, but you work as, an IT for a very large US bank, to protect the bank and obviously the individuals that use the bank. What other concerns should we have in the digital space? I mean, we're talking specifically about social media platforms, but what are some other things that we might be doing that is causing ourselves to be, exposed, if you will?
Well, one of the most common problems that I see personally is people reusing passwords across multiple platforms. Like that's like a death sentence.
Uh-oh.
So
yeah.
if you have an email and a password that you use for, let's say, bestbuy.com for your Best Buy account, you're also using that same email and that same password for your bank. You're also using that same email and same password for Facebook, for Instagram. Well, just try it. The hacker gets one, they just go around trying random websites and see what they get hit with. I get emails all the time and the reason why I said Best Buy is I get emails all the time from Best Buy saying, hey, somebody requested, forgot your password function for Best Buy, but I don't have a Best Buy account. They're just phishing.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. The other thing is, one of the most dangerous places you can log in is from a foreign hotspot. Like, well-known ones like Starbucks are generally okay. But if you're at like a small-time coffee shop, you're probably very exposed there. Because what people can do is, if you connect to that Wi-Fi, when you read that really long thing that nobody ever reads, it actually says it in there that if you connect to this hotspot, it's an open hotspot, meaning any information you send, like any passwords you send to the router to authenticate through the internet and relay the information back to you to display on the screen, that can all be intercepted very easily.
Yeah. Wow. So set up two-factor authentications. Don't use the same password. Get a 1Password or a LastPass or one of these different groups that can create passwords for you. And be leery. Now, actually, just the question: what if I go to a place like a little coffee shop and I use my phone's hotspot? Does that expose me, or would that be a better,
That's a little more secure because your phone is still is encrypted.
Okay.
And so it's not easy to just pull through it. So when I say it's open, meaning you just connect to, I don't want to use like, let's say a very large coffee shop that is all over the place. You connect to that hotspot. Someone malfeasant also is connected to that hotspot and is pulling back data that's moving through that hotspot. It can happen. I do this at home all the time with my kids. I monitor their traffic on the router, but it's my router, it's my internet, so it's not really a problem if I do it.
Right.
But just as easily as I do it at home, it's just as easy for someone to do it at a pizza place.
Wow. Well, I'm so grateful, Matt. Well, it's been a blessing. Any last comments that you would like to leave with men to either in their faith journey or in their digital lives?
Use common sense. Read. Just do lots of reading because I don't know. I don't want to sound pompous the way I say this, but the way I make money is oftentimes because someone somewhere just clicked the button they weren't supposed to.
I get it. I'm guilty, and then I'm very fine with being the example. on this episode. So, yeah.
So just be vigilant, just like St. Paul says, the devil is like a roaring, prowling lion out for a kill. So are these internet hackers from India and China.
Yeah.
And if you see a Bitcoin thing, because I'm also a finance person, if someone's coming to you and saying, "Hey, give me $500 and in a week you'll get 4,000," they're lying to you.
That's right. That's right. There's a saying, right, that if it's too good to be true, you are the product.
Exactly.
So that's so true. Wow. Well, Matt, again, we're so grateful. We just really thank you for who you are, for your faith journey, your witness, and for the support that you have given to the Catholic Gentleman without our request. So you are in our prayers, and we just really appreciate you being with us today.
Oh, thank you. God bless.
Yeah, God bless. Well, as we end each of our episodes,
be a man, be a saint.